by virtue of the wisdom vested in the Rixaka Forum, this occasion have been declared a gathering in honor of phenomenal women. Nobody can disagree with me when I say the South African Auditor General, Tsakani Maluleke, the UNISA Vice Chancellor Designate, Professor Puleng Linkabula, are truly phenomenal women. Tsakani is one of the most accomplished and the most well-rounded number crunchers ever to come out of this country. Similarly, Puleng is one of the most gifted academics and ethicists in the South African Academy today. And so the two of them are well versed and thoroughly soaked in their own individual professions. It is neither chance nor luck that propelled Puleng and Tsakani up to their positions. Rather, it is South Africa that is fortunate that these two superb women, who could have served anywhere in the private sector and anywhere in the world for that matter, have offered their talents and their remarkable repertoire of skills and experiences to the South African public service at this time. I want to thank Rixaka for this powerful caption, phenomenal women, for an event that is a once-in-a-lifetime occasion and also one that deserves to be multiplied, to be magnified, to be amplified several times over. 5 generations of our ancestors have not had the privilege of seeing a black woman Auditor General. 150 years later, a black woman Vice Chancellor takes the helm at the only university that bears the name of our beloved country, the University of South Africa. 240 years later, the first black woman in the USA, Kamala Harris, has become the Vice President Designate of that country. What a time to be alive. For us, the elevation of Tsakani and Puleng have turned 2020 a year that you could rightfully say has been an annus horribilis into an annus mirabilis of sorts. Go check your Latin if you want. Each in their own ways, the names Tsakani and Puleng are an invitation to joyfulness. The joy that comes with the first rains of spring, 2 phenomenal women rising together and raising us with them. This is a moment to relish and savor. It is not so much a beginning as it is a culmination. Not so much an arrival as it is a takeoff. In our pilgrimage of struggle as a people, this is a milestone, one that should be marked with indelible ink deep in our souls. And yet, it was not for lack of trying that the foremothers of Puleng and Tsakani were not able to see in their lifetimes what we see in ours. Our ancestors and our foremothers did not lack ambition, and they were not devoid of talent. The reason they were not able to scale the heights that some of their daughters are able to scale today is because the racist systems, the patriarchal institutions, and the colonial ideologies were designed to keep black women out, to terrorize and crush those women who dared to break into the secluded spaces, spaces which are marked white men only, as well as those spaces which are marked black men only. The bad news is that these dark systems of racism and patriarchy have long been institutionalized and acculturated into many of our institutions. Racism, patriarchy, and class remain embedded in most South African institutions, public and private. These isms never tire of manufacturing unwritten strategies for distracting, for tripping, for blocking, for trivializing, and for crushing black women. As systems that embed themselves in institutions, policies, and customs, racism and patriarchy are resilient because they adapt, they adopt, and they mutate. They do not always speak in their own name. Nowadays, racism and patriarchy seldom travel in public, and when they do, they almost never travel alone. They often front their somewhat nobler fellow travelers: tribalism, xenophobia, ethnocentrism, among others. And yet, we cannot postpone our joy just because it is not yet fully uhuru. It is indeed not yet uhuru, even in those zones which we thought were liberated since 1994. We discover again and again to our disappointment that more work needs to be done. We know that we are not yet at uhuru, not merely economically, but more crucially, it is not yet uhuru mentally and ideologically. And yet, just because it's not yet uhuru, we dare not fail to mark the small victories which we clock up along the winding road to comprehensive freedom. The elevation of Tsakani and Puleng is one such small but profound victory. Perhaps uhuru will not come marching down the highway one day, but she will come cumulatively in little steps, tiptoeing over and around our pothole-riddled mental landscapes. Perhaps uhuru will not come like a thunderstorm. Instead, uhuru will come like the softest of rains that spray gently over our dried-up wells of hope. The rains will fall cumulatively until we are able to shake off our national slumber and wake up from our long nightmare. It seems to me that if we are to continue executing the revolution, we must dig deep into our wells of resilience. We must call upon the spirits of Kimpa Vita, No Ngause, Charlotte Maxeke, Christina Mukutudinku, Lillian Ngoyi, Winnie Mandela, Mantatise, Louisa Shintomani, Katisa Chabalala, and Wash Kukwani, the troublemaker. These are the women who propelled us to this point in history. They are the foremothers of Puleng and Tsakani. Towards the end of her poem, Phenomenal Woman, Maya Angelou typically combines poetic charm with dead seriousness when she writes, "Now you understand just why my head is not bowed. I don't shout or jump about. I don't have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud." As I watched Tsakani being interviewed for the job of Auditor General, it made me so proud. I was pacing up and down the room. And when the news that she was recommended and eventually that she had been appointed came through, my chest was swollen with pride. When Puleng called me to inform me that she had been offered the job of Vice Chancellor at UNISA, my mind went wild. It took me to a conference in Athens, Greece, in the early 2000s, at the Olympic Village, on the seashore, by the golden blue Aegean Sea, where I sat and I listened with pride to Puleng reading a powerful paper. I don't know if she remembers that. One evening, while happily talking about the appointment of Tsakani and Puleng to friends and family, I broke down and cried. I cried in memory of the grandfather of Tsakani Maluleke, the late Rhinos Maluleke, who forced Tsakani to start school at DC Maribate Primary School when she was barely 5 years old. He, who in his own township-based business taught Tsakani the first principles in accounting. I cried in memory of Mme Edith Linka, Puleng's mother, that beautiful Mosotho woman who carried Puleng in her womb and wrapped her up in love as soon as she landed on earth. She, Mme Edith Linka, a woman who is missing out today on this moment when her daughter has been elevated to the highest position in any university in the world. I shed a tear in honor and in salute of Kokwan, Elina Mshengi Nwaseme, she who cultivated a sense of self-love and instilled a sense of discipline in Tsakani and her siblings, Gogo Nwamlangacha, she who did not spare the rod and therefore did not spoil this child. I cried in reverence to Ntate Khafu Limme Masentsuwe, that regal couple who turned heads when they walked in the street. They who meticulously brought Puleng up, showering her with so much love every step of the way, so that to this day, Puleng oozes love, love for self and love for fellow human beings, the real leitmotif of her vocation as an ethicist. Deep in my psyche, I cried in memory of the late Judge George Shane Semi Maluleke, who as a young black lawyer taught his children that they could be anything they wished to be and that failure was not an option. Deep in my soul, I cried out in search of Ntate Mohulu Zwart Boy Shuluko Linka. I cried as I tried to imagine how Nkunu Nkheteleng Litunya might have danced and ululated upon receipt of the news that her granddaughter is the Vice-Chancellor designate of the University of South Africa. Ukari kiamona Nkunu Manyakallo Mohapelwa Anse Akhiba. Ukari kiamona Ntate Shulukulinka Anse Ahubela Manene Tabeng Tsamukhotlong. Onge nongubona mkhalabye 7 loko a chachula aku loko nikutan hi yin'wana nxavo loko nikutan muku hi yin'wana nxavo loko nikutan hi yin'wana nxavo loko nikutan hi yin'wana nxavo loko nikutan nikutan. I cried until I joined Nina Simone in song, wishing I could be like a bird in the sky, wishing I could soar to the sun and look down at the sea. For then maybe, as Nina Simone says, I would know how it feels to be free. Then I would trumpet from the skies the beautiful things that Tsakani and Puleng are doing for this country. I would say these things loud, I would say them clear, for the whole round world to hear. Homu homu Mwanati, hoyo hoyo Mwajojo, wa rhinos, wa 7, wa molombo, wa mafusani, wa malatisi, wa panganani, shinyela babeni. Betarama tsala tsalani shanga shibishakenza makhekhe, wena wakamafula heshiburi batika nyundu. Liwena liputing la khwase, mutu wakuhlaba khokho kalimao. Wena le kholotse le korotsana, ngwana padi ya mathunya, mohala kibe kasi khobosho kasi bunung. Aisa khorong ha morena mogolwane, a re bona morena ke hlabile. Khele di khomu. Thank you very much.